I discovered my husband invited his mistress to our anniversary party. But what he didn't know was that I had already planned to expose them both in front of everyone who mattered. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. The notification lit up my phone screen at 4:23 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. A calendar reminder for our shared Google account. Party venue final walkthrough Saturday 2 p.m. Confirmed guest list with Marianne. Marianne. That name stopped me cold. I sat in my home office staring at that single word while my tea grew cold beside me. Marianne wasn't on our guest list. I had spent 3 months meticulously planning our 12th wedding anniversary celebration, an elegant garden party at the Riverside Estate, 150 guests, live jazz band, custom cocktails named after significant moments in our relationship. Every detail had been carefully curated. Every name on that list personally approved by both of us. So who the hell was Marianne? My fingers moved almost automatically, opening our shared calendar app. There it was, buried among legitimate appointments. Lunch with Marianne, Morton Steakhouse. Coffee meeting, Marianne. Discuss party details with M. The entries went back 5 months, carefully scheduled during my work hours, my yoga classes, my book club meetings. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not panic, not even surprise, really. Just a cold, crystalline clarity settling over everything, like frost forming on a window. This wasn't paranoia. This was pattern recognition. I opened our joint credit card account, the one we used for household expenses and special occasions. The charges told their own story. Morton Steakhouse, on dates I remembered him saying he was working late. Bellamy's Boutique, a designer dress shop I'd never set foot in. The Grandview Hotel, charged twice in the past month during what he claimed were local client meetings that didn't require overnight stays. But it was the most recent charge that made my hands finally tremble. Riverside Estate, additional guest accommodation upgrade, $847. He had upgraded something at our anniversary party venue without telling me, for someone named Marianne. I pulled up my emails and searched for anything from the venue coordinator. There, buried in my spam folder where it had been automatically filtered, was a message from 3 days ago. Per your husband's request, we've upgraded the package to include the private garden suite for Miss Marianne Chen. The additional accommodations and premium bar service have been added to your final invoice. Marianne Chen. Now I had a full name. My heart was pounding now, but my mind had never been clearer. I stood up, walked to our bedroom, and opened the closet we shared. His side was immaculately organized as always. Suits arranged by color, shoes polished and lined up perfectly, ties hung with military precision. The life we'd built together, represented in fabric and leather. I was about to start searching through his pockets when my phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Marianne from the event planning committee. Your husband gave me your number. So excited to finally meet you at the party. He's told me so much about you. Can't wait to celebrate your special day together. Heart." The emoji at the end felt like a slap. The audacity of it, the sheer brazen confidence. I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over, parsing every word for hidden meaning. Finally meet you. Told me so much about you. Celebrate together. She thought she was invited. She thought this was legitimate. She thought my husband had cleared this with me, which meant she didn't know she was the other woman. Or she didn't care. Or worse, she thought she was about to replace me. I sat back down on the edge of our bed, the bed where we'd slept together for 12 years, where we'd made plans and shared dreams and built what I thought was an honest partnership. My phone was still in my hand, that message glowing on the screen. I could have called him, could have screamed, thrown things, demanded explanations. That's what the old version of me might have done, the version who still believed in the fairness of honest confrontation. Instead, I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Anniversary Preparations. Innocuous enough if he ever checked. Then I began methodically saving everything. Screenshots of the calendar entries, PDF downloads of credit card statements, the email from the venue coordinator, that text message from Marianne Chen. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I responded to her text. "Hi, Marianne. So wonderful to hear from you. I'm thrilled you'll be joining us. My husband has been rather mysterious about some of the party details. You know how he likes surprises. Would you mind terribly if we grabbed coffee before the party? I'd love to coordinate with you on a few things. I want everything to be absolutely perfect. Heart." I added my own emoji. Let her think we were going to be friends. Her response came back within 2 minutes. "OMG, yes, I'd love that. How about tomorrow? There's a cute place called Rosewood Cafe near downtown. Does 10 a.m. work?" "Perfect," I typed back. "See you then." I set my phone down and walked to the window. Outside, our neighborhood looked exactly as it always did. Neat lawns, expensive cars and driveways, the illusion of perfect lives behind perfect doors. I had lived in this illusion for 12 years, maybe longer. My husband, Julian, would be home in 3 hours. He'd walk through the door with that same smile he always wore, kiss my cheek, ask about my day. He'd probably mention being tired from meetings, maybe pour himself a whiskey, settle into his favorite chair with his laptop. And I would smile back. I would ask about his day. I would play the role I'd been playing while he built this secret life right under my nose. But everything had changed. He just didn't know it yet. I looked at the calendar on my phone. Our anniversary party was in 9 days. 9 days until 150 of our closest friends, family members, and professional contacts gathered to celebrate our marriage. 9 days until Marianne Chen walked into a party thinking she was a welcomed guest. 9 days to plan the most memorable anniversary celebration anyone would ever witness. I saved Marianne's number under a new contact. Party surprise. Then I began making a list. Not a guest list or a menu plan, but something else entirely. A strategic plan. A timeline. A carefully orchestrated revelation that would ensure everyone present understood exactly what kind of man Julian really was. The old me would have canceled the party, filed for divorce quietly, tried to maintain dignity through discretion. But as I sat there, watching the sun set over our perfectly manicured lawn, I realized something profound. I didn't want dignity. I didn't want discretion. I wanted justice, and I wanted witnesses. The party was still happening, but it was going to be very, very different from what Julian had planned. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The next morning, I woke up before Julian's alarm went off. I had barely slept. My mind racing through possibilities, scenarios, questions that needed answers. But when he stirred beside me, I was ready with my performance. "Morning," I murmured, exactly as I always did, my voice still soft with false sleep. "Morning, sweetheart," he replied, leaning over to kiss my forehead. The gesture that used to feel loving now felt like a calculated lie, a reflex performed out of habit, rather than affection. I watched him go through his morning routine. Shower, shave, the expensive cologne I'd bought him last Christmas. He selected a navy suit, the one that made his eyes look darker. Was he dressing for Marianne today? Had he always been dressing for someone else? "Big day?" I asked, casually, sipping the coffee I'd made for both of us. "Just the usual chaos," he said with that familiar smile. "Couple of client meetings, then probably working late to finish the Henderson proposal. Don't wait up." "Of course," I replied, matching his smile with my own carefully constructed mask. "I've got coffee with someone this morning. Wedding planning friend who wants advice on venues." The lie came so easily. I wondered how many lies he'd told me that had come just as smoothly. After Julian left, I stood in our silent house for exactly 5 minutes, letting the weight of my deception settle. Then I moved into action. I started in his home office, the room he kept locked when he wasn't there. Except I knew the combination to his desk drawer for years. It was our wedding date. The irony wasn't lost on me. Inside, I found his personal laptop, the one he claimed was only for sensitive client work. I photographed every document I could find, working quickly but methodically. There were hotel receipts he'd hidden, restaurant bills, even a jewelry store receipt for a diamond bracelet I'd never seen. The date on that receipt was Valentine's Day, 3 months ago. He'd given me flowers that day. Supermarket flowers, last minute, already wilting. But the real discovery was in his email. I knew his password, another piece of information he thought was private but had carelessly revealed years ago. I opened his personal Gmail account, the one he never mentioned. The emails to Marianne Chen went back 8 months. 8 months of thinking about you and can't wait to see you and she doesn't understand me the way you do. 8 months of planning secret meetings, stolen afternoons, a whole relationship built in the shadows of our marriage. But it was one specific email thread that made my blood run cold. From Julian. I think it's time. The anniversary party could be the perfect opportunity. We'll tell everyone together. Clean break, fresh start. You'll finally be able to stop hiding, and we can begin our real life. From Marianne. Are you sure? That seems so public. Won't it humiliate her? From Julian. She's stronger than you think. And honestly, this way there's no backing out. Public commitment. Everyone will know we're serious. Besides, the party's already paid for. Might as well make it serve a dual purpose. Ending one chapter and beginning another. I read those words 3 times, making sure I understood correctly. I photographed every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence. Then I carefully returned everything to exactly where I'd found it, locked the drawer, and left his office looking undisturbed. At 9:45 a.m., I drove to Rosewood Cafe, my hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos in my mind. I needed to see her, needed to understand who this woman was who thought she could walk into my life and take what was mine. I spotted her immediately when I walked in. She was sitting at a corner table, impossibly young, maybe 28 or 29, with glossy dark hair and the kind of effortless beauty that came from youth and confidence. She was wearing designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire outfit. The diamond bracelet on her wrist caught the light. My bracelet. The one Julian had bought for her on Valentine's Day. Marianne? I approached with a warm smile, extending my hand. Oh my God, hi! She jumped up, her enthusiasm genuine and almost childlike. I'm so excited to finally meet you. Julian talks about you constantly. Does he? I sat down across from her, studying her face. She wasn't lying. She actually believed whatever Julian had told her about me. What does he say? She laughed, a bright, tinkling sound. Oh, you know, how brilliant you are at event planning, how you're always so busy with your consulting work. He says you two are like ships passing in the night these days, barely see each other. That's why he thought it would be nice to have some help with the party planning. Ships passing in the night. So that was the narrative he'd constructed. We'd grown apart naturally, drifted into different lives, a marriage that had simply run its course. And how did you meet Julian? I asked, keeping my tone light and curious. At a tech conference in Denver last year. I was there representing my company's marketing division, and he was giving a keynote on innovation strategies. We ended up sitting next to each other at the gala dinner, and we just clicked, you know? He's so intelligent, so visionary. Last year. So it had been longer than 8 months. The emails only documented when they'd taken it digital. That's lovely, I said. And you're engaged yourself, I understand? Julian mentioned you were planning a wedding. Her face did something complicated, a flicker of guilt, quickly suppressed. Oh, that's... Actually,
I ended that engagement a few months ago. Derek was a great guy, but we wanted different things. He was always so focused on his startup, never had time for a real relationship. I needed someone more emotionally available. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. She'd left her fiancé for my husband, a married man, because she needed someone emotionally available? I'm sorry to hear that, I lied smoothly. Breakups are never easy. It's fine, really, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Actually, between us, I think I found something much better. Someone who really sees me, you know? She was talking about Julian, right to my face. The woman was either incredibly bold or incredibly stupid. That's wonderful, I said, my smile never wavering. Everyone deserves to be seen. We talked for another 45 minutes. I asked careful questions, listening to her describe her relationship with Julian without ever explicitly naming him. She talked about someone special who was planning to make a big life change soon. Someone who was ready to start fresh and build something real. She actually believed he was going to leave me for her. She believed in his promises. As I listened to her talk, I realized something important. Marianne wasn't a villain. She was a fool. Julian had lied to her just as thoroughly as he'd lied to me. She genuinely thought she was going to be introduced at the party as his girlfriend, that this was all going to be handled maturely and respectfully. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. Neither of them did. I'm so glad we did this, Marianne said as we prepared to leave. I was a little nervous, to be honest. Some wives might not be so understanding about their husband having female friends. Oh, I'm very understanding, I assured her. Trust me, at the party, everything is going to become perfectly clear. She beamed at me, completely missing the edge in my voice. I can't wait. It's going to be such a special night. Yes, I agreed, gathering my purse. It's certainly going to be unforgettable. As I drove home, I pulled over twice to make phone calls. The first was to a private investigator whose card I'd found in my desk drawer, a remnant from when I'd done background checks for my consulting business. His name was Marcus Reynolds, and he came highly recommended. I need complete surveillance on two people: photos, videos, timeline of movements. I need everything documented professionally, and I need it done in the next 8 days. That's a tight timeline, Marcus said. It'll cost extra. Money isn't an issue. Thoroughness is. My second call was to someone I never thought I'd contact. Derek Chen, Marianne's ex-fiancé. I'd found him through LinkedIn, a successful tech entrepreneur with a company profile that listed his personal email. The message I sent was brief. Mr. Chen, my name is Elena Morrison. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance in Marianne Chen. I think we need to talk about some recent developments that might interest you. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow? This concerns your former fiancé and my current husband, who have been involved for the past year. I hit send before I could second-guess myself.
When I got home, I went straight to my laptop and created a detailed timeline. 8 months of documented emails. A year of suspected involvement. 12 years of marriage. 3 months of anniversary party planning. 9 days until the event. Everything was starting to take shape. Not just a confrontation, but a comprehensive exposure. Not just ending my marriage, but ensuring Julian faced consequences for his calculated cruelty. My phone buzzed. An email notification. It was from Derek Chen. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Harborview Coffee Shop. I'll be there. I smiled for the first time since this nightmare began. Not a fake smile, but a real one. Cold and sharp and full of purpose. Julian thought he was orchestrating a grand finale. What he didn't understand was that I was rewriting the entire script. And unlike him, I was very, very good at keeping secrets. Derek Chen was already seated when I arrived at Harborview Coffee Shop the next afternoon. He was younger than I expected, maybe 32, with sharp features and the kind of intensity that successful entrepreneurs often carried. He stood when he saw me, his expression guarded but curious. "Elena Morrison,"
he asked, extending his hand. Thank you for meeting me, I said, settling into the chair across from him. I know this must seem strange. Strange is an understatement, he replied, studying my face carefully. Your email mentioned Marianne and your husband. I'm listening. I pulled out my tablet and opened the folder I'd prepared. How much do you know about why Marianne entered your engagement? His jaw tightened. She said we wanted different things, that I was too focused on work, that she needed someone more present. The usual script when someone's checking out of a relationship. Did you suspect there was someone else? Derek's silence was answer enough. Finally, he nodded. Toward the end, yes. She was distant, always on her phone, making excuses. But she denied it every time I asked, said I was being paranoid. I turned the tablet toward him, showing him the first email exchange between Julian and Marianne. This is from 8 months ago. But based on what she told me yesterday, they met a year ago at a tech conference in Denver. He read in silence, his expression darkening with each line. When he looked up, there was something raw in his eyes. She was at that conference. We'd just gotten engaged 2 months before. She came back different, distant. I thought it was wedding stress. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I know what it's like to have someone rewrite history while you're still living in it. Derek scrolled through more emails, his fingers moving mechanically. What do you need from me? Information, I said. Marianne mentioned you were always focused on your startup. What kind of business? Tech security. We developed encryption software for financial institutions. He paused, something shifting in his expression. Actually, that's interesting. Marianne had access to some of our preliminary code. She was helping with marketing materials, needed to understand the product. When we broke up, I asked her to return all company materials. She said she had deleted everything. But you don't think she did. I had my IT team check her access logs after she left. She downloaded the entire source code 2 weeks before ending our engagement. When I confronted her, she said it was a backup, that she'd forgotten about it. I leaned forward. What would that code be worth to a competitor? Millions. We were about to close a major funding round. If that technology got into the wrong hands, he trailed off, understanding dawning. What does your husband do? He's a consultant for tech companies, specializes in competitive analysis and market positioning. I pulled up Julian's client list on my tablet. Does Vectordyne Technologies mean anything to you? His face went pale. They're our biggest competitor. They've been trying to reverse engineer our encryption protocols for 2 years. If they had our source code, he sat back, processing. You think Marianne gave it to him? I think my husband targets vulnerable people for strategic advantage, I said carefully. I think he saw an opportunity at that conference, a young woman engaged to someone with valuable intellectual property, someone who might be flattered by attention from an older, successful man. And I made it easy for him, Derek said bitterly. I was so focused on the business, on securing funding, on building something. I left her alone, gave her reasons to feel neglected. That's not on you, I said firmly. People who cheat don't cheat because they're neglected. They cheat because they choose to. My husband and I talked about children next year. We had plans, a timeline. He was still making those plans with me while starting something with Marianne. Derek was quiet for a long moment. What's your endgame here? In 8 days, I'm hosting an anniversary party. 150 guests, friends, family, professional contacts. Julian thinks he's going to use that party to announce our divorce and introduce Marianne as his new partner. I paused, letting that sink in. He thinks he's orchestrating a clean transition. What he doesn't know is that I know everything, and I'm going to make sure everyone else does too. Public exposure. Complete exposure, I corrected. Not just the affair. Everything. The lies, the manipulation, the calculated way he built this. I want every person in that room to understand exactly who Julian Morrison really is. Derek considered this. And Marianne?
She's a victim too, in her own way. But she also made choices. She participated in this, helped him deceive both of us. She deserves to face consequences. I met his eyes. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. And I'm looking for allies. What do you need from me?
I pulled out a folder containing printed documents, financial records, email exchanges, timeline analysis. I need you to document everything about the source code. File a formal complaint with your board, create an official record. I need paper trails that connect Marianne's access to Julian's consulting work for Vectordyne. I need this to be more than personal betrayal. I need it to have professional and potentially legal consequences. Derek took the folder, flipping through it. This is thorough. I've spent the last 3 days building a case, I said. I hired a private investigator. I've documented their movements, their meetings, their expenses. I've tracked every lie Julian told me, every excuse, every fake business trip. I have security footage from hotels, receipts from restaurants, text messages he thought were deleted. Why not just file for divorce and take him to court? Because a quiet divorce lets him control the narrative. He tells people we grew apart, that it was mutual, that these things happen. He moves on with Marianne, maybe even keeps some of his professional reputation intact. Meanwhile, I'm the abandoned wife, the woman who couldn't keep her husband interested. My voice had gotten harder without me realizing it. I took a breath, steadied myself. I spent 12 years building a life with someone who was planning his exit strategy while I was planning our future. I'm not giving him the dignity of a quiet dissolution. I want everyone to see what he did. I want his colleagues to know he used their trust for corporate espionage. I want our friends to know he lied to all of them. I want Marianne to understand she wasn't special. She was strategic. Derek nodded slowly. When you said you weren't looking for revenge, you were lying. No, revenge is emotional, impulsive. This is calculated justice. There's a difference. He almost smiled at that. All right, I'm in. What's the timeline? We spent the next 2 hours coordinating. Derek would have his legal team file formal complaints about the intellectual property theft by Monday. He'd request an audit of all communications between Marianne and external parties during her employment. He'd make sure there was official documentation of her access to proprietary code. Meanwhile, I would continue building my case. The private investigator was already following Julian and Marianne, documenting their meetings, their routine. I had tapped into our home security system, reviewing footage of Julian's comings and goings, his private phone calls in his office when he thought I was out. One more thing, Derek said as we prepared to leave. On this party, when everything comes out, what happens to Marianne? I thought about the young woman I'd had coffee with, so confident in her future, so certain that Julian loved her enough to leave his wife publicly. She'll be humiliated, professionally damaged if the intellectual property theft sticks, socially ruined among anyone who matters in their industry. And you're okay with that? She helped destroy my marriage while thinking she was building her own relationship. She stole from your company. She lied to everyone around her. I gathered my things. Am I supposed to protect her from consequences because she's young and naive? Derek shook his head. Just making sure you've thought it through. Once you do this, there's no taking it back. Everyone's lives change, yours included. My life already changed. The moment Julian decided our marriage was disposable. I'm just making sure the change happens on my terms, not his. That evening, I had dinner with Julian like nothing was wrong. He talked about his day, complained about a difficult client, asked about my week. I smiled and nodded and played the role of supportive wife while mentally cataloging every lie he told. How's the party planning going? He asked casually over dessert. Everything's coming together beautifully, I said. The venue confirmed all the details. The caterer finalized the menu. I think everyone is going to be very surprised by how it all turns out. I'm sure you've done an amazing job, he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. The touch made my skin crawl. But I squeezed back, held his gaze, smiled like I believed him. After he went to bed, I stayed up working on the final details. I had created a presentation, a carefully edited compilation of evidence that would play on screens throughout the party venue. Photos, emails, receipts, timeline analysis, a complete narrative of Julian's deception presented with professional polish. I had also drafted personal letters to key people who would be at the party. Julian's business partners, my family, close friends. Letters that would be handed to them at specific moments during the evening, providing context before the main reveal. This wasn't going to be a messy public meltdown. It was going to be choreographed, controlled, devastating. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus, the private investigator. Got something interesting. Julian met with Vectordyne's CEO today. Long lunch, very friendly. They're planning something big. We'll have photos by tomorrow. I replied, perfect. Send everything to my secure folder. 6 days until the party. 6 days to finalize every detail, ensure every piece was in position. 6 days until Julian Morrison learned that underestimating your wife was the most expensive mistake a man could make.
The morning of day 4, before the party, I received the surveillance photos from Marcus. They were damning in their clarity. Julian and Marianne entering the Grandview Hotel together at 2 in the afternoon, leaving 3 hours later. Julian meeting with Vectordyne's CEO, Victor Hartley, exchanging what appeared to be a USB drive. Marianne and Julian having intimate dinners at restaurants across the city, his hand on her knee, her head on his shoulder. But the most valuable photo was one I hadn't expected. Julian, Marianne, and Victor Hartley together at a private dining room in the Silverton Club. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks ago. All 3 of them smiling over champagne, clearly celebrating something. I forwarded everything to Derek, then called him immediately. They're all in on it together, I said without preamble. Vectordyne's CEO is part of this. That USB drive exchange? Julian's been feeding him your technology. Derek was silent for a moment. That explains how they've suddenly solved problems that took us years to develop. We thought they'd hired away one of our engineers. We never considered corporate espionage at this level. How quickly can your legal team move on this? We can have cease and desist letters drafted by tomorrow. But Alina, if we go after Vectordyne legally, it's going to get ugly. Federal investigation, potential criminal charges. Are you prepared for that level of exposure? I thought about Julian's face when he'd kissed me goodbye that morning, the casual way he'd lied about his plans for the day. I want him to face every consequence he deserves. If that means federal charges, so be it. All right, I'll have my attorneys coordinate with yours. We'll time everything to drop right after your party. Let them think they're safe, then pull the rug out completely. After hanging up, I turned my attention to the party itself. I had hired an audio-visual company to set up discrete screens throughout the venue, ostensibly for displaying photos from our 12 years together. The technician, a young woman named Sophia, had been surprisingly understanding when I'd explained what I actually needed. So, you want the romantic slideshow to play initially, then at your signal, everything switches to the exposure presentation? Exactly. And I need it to be simultaneous on all screens. No delay, no chance for anyone to shut it down before the full presentation plays. Sophia nodded, making notes on her tablet. I can set up a secure wireless trigger. You'll have a remote, one button press, everything changes. The system will be locked so only you can control it. Even if someone tries to unplug the screens, they'll keep playing on battery backup for at least 30 minutes. Perfect. And you're comfortable with this? I know it's unusual. She looked at me directly. My ex-husband cheated on me with my sister. He announced it at Thanksgiving dinner like it was something to celebrate. If I'd had the chance to plan my response instead of just sitting there in shock, I would have done exactly what you're doing. This guy deserves whatever's coming. I felt a rush of gratitude for the stranger who understood. Thank you. One question, though. What about the guests who don't deserve to see this? Like, do you have elderly relatives or kids who will be there? I had thought about this extensively. No children. It's an evening event, adults only. My parents passed away years ago. Julian's parents will be there, but they've never treated me as anything more than an inconvenience in their son's life. They'll survive the shock. And your friends? The ones that matter will understand why I'm doing this. The ones that don't, I shrugged. I'll find out who my real friends are, won't I? Over the next 2 days, I executed the remaining pieces of my plan with surgical precision. I contacted the venue coordinator and made a special request for the seating arrangement. Julian and I would be at the head table, naturally, but I positioned specific people at strategic locations.
Derek at a table with several of Julian's business associates, my best friend, Catherine, near the exit with her husband who was an attorney, Marcus, the private investigator, at a table with a clear view of Julian's reaction. I also hired a videographer, telling Julian it was to capture memories of our special night. What I didn't tell him was that I'd instructed the videographer to focus on Julian and Marianne's reactions during the reveal. I wanted documentation of everything. On day 2 before the party, I met with Catherine for lunch. She was the only person I'd told Julian's affair, the only one who knew what was coming. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Elena, once you do this, there's no going back. Your marriage will be over, yes, but your reputation will also change. People will talk about this for years." "Let them talk," I said. "What's the alternative? Pretend I don't know? File for divorce quietly and let Julian control the story? Watch him move on with Marianne while everyone whispers about how I couldn't keep my husband happy? No one who knows you would think that. But they would wonder. They'd speculate. They'd create their own narratives about what went wrong." I set down my fork, my appetite gone. This way, there's no speculation. Everyone sees exactly what happened. The truth, documented and undeniable. Catherine reached across the table, taking my hand. "I just don't want you to get hurt worse than you already are."
I'm already destroyed, Kat. My marriage was a lie. The man I loved doesn't exist. He's a construction, a performance. The real Julian is someone who could plan to humiliate me at my own anniversary party while I was organizing the flowers and menu selections. My voice cracked slightly. I can't get revenge for 12 years of deception, but I can make sure he doesn't get to walk away clean. She squeezed my hand. "Okay, then I'm with you, whatever you need. I need you to be ready to get me out of there if it gets too intense. After the presentation plays, after everyone knows, I'm going to leave. I don't want to stay and answer questions or face judgment. I just want to make my statement and go. David and I will have the car ready. We'll create an exit path for you." That evening, Julian came home with flowers, expensive roses from the florist downtown. "For my beautiful wife," he said, presenting them with a flourish. "I know I've been distracted lately with work. I wanted to remind you how much you mean to me." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed him. "They're lovely," I said, accepting the flowers and his kiss. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to appreciate you?" He pulled me close, his hands on my waist. "I'm looking forward to the party, celebrating us, our life together. It's going to be a night to remember." "Yes," I agreed, meeting his eyes. "It certainly will be." Later, after he'd gone to bed, I stood in my closet selecting the dress I would wear. I'd bought it specifically for this occasion, a stunning emerald green that Julian had never seen. It was elegant, sophisticated, powerful, the dress of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. I tried it on, studying myself in the mirror. I looked different than I had a week ago, harder somehow, but also clearer. The woman staring back at me wasn't a victim. She was someone who had been wronged and had chosen to fight back strategically. My phone buzzed with a message from Derek. "Legal team ready, cease and desist letters prepared, criminal complaint drafted, everything coordinated with the SEC for the Vectordyne investigation. We're just waiting for your signal." I replied, "Day after tomorrow. Let them have their moment of confidence first." Another message, this time from Marianne. "So excited for tomorrow night. I found the perfect dress. You're going to love it. Can't wait to celebrate with you and Julian." The innocence in her message was almost painful. She genuinely thought this was going to be a joyable occasion. She had no idea she was walking into an execution. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to her. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the presentation one final time. It was 23 minutes long, a comprehensive timeline of Julian's deception, presented with clear evidence and minimal commentary. The facts spoke for themselves. It opened with our wedding photo, young and hopeful. Then it progressed chronologically through our marriage, anniversaries, holidays, the normal milestones of a life together.
At month 132 of our marriage, a new element appeared, the first hotel charge that coincided with Julian's business trip. From there, the evidence accumulated. Receipts, emails, photos, text messages, all timestamped and sourced. The presentation included screenshots of Julian's emails to Marianne, including the one where he discussed using our anniversary party as his announcement venue. It showed the Vectordyne connection, the intellectual property theft, the financial trail of deception, and it concluded with a single slide. Truth has a way of surfacing. Tonight, you've witnessed 12 years of lies exposed in 23 minutes. Some of you enabled this. Some of you suspected and said nothing. Some of you are innocent bystanders. All of you are now witnesses. Choose what kind of person you want to be with this information. It was harsh, maybe even cruel, but it was honest. Tomorrow night, 150 people would gather to celebrate a marriage that didn't exist. They would toast to love and commitment while standing in a beautiful garden under twinkling lights. They would eat gourmet food and dance to live music and believe, for a few hours, in the possibility of lasting romance. And then they would learn the truth. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Tomorrow would be a long day. Final venue preparations, hair and makeup, getting dressed, greeting early arriving guests. I needed to be rested, focused, ready. As I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This time tomorrow, everything would be different. My marriage would be publicly destroyed, Julian's reputation would be in ruins, Marianne would be facing professional and legal consequences, and I would be free. Damaged, certainly, but free from the weight of unknowing. Julian stirred beside me, reaching out in his sleep to pull me closer, an automatic gesture, meaningless. I let him hold me one last time, knowing it was the last night we would ever spend in the same bed. Tomorrow, the truth would surface, and I would finally breathe.
He kissed my forehead and headed for the shower, humming something cheerful. I lay there listening to the water run, wondering if he'd rehearsed his speech yet, the one where he'd announce our divorce in front of everyone we knew. Did he have notes? Had he practiced the right tone of regret mixed with optimism about new beginnings? My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia, the AV technician. All systems checked and locked. Remote is programmed. You're good to go. Knock 'em dead. Another from Marcus. Final surveillance package uploaded to your secure folder. You'll want to see the photos from last night. I opened the folder. Julian and Marianne at her apartment, visible through the window. The timestamp showed 11 p.m., hours after he'd told me he was working late at the office. They were drinking wine, laughing, his jacket draped over her chair. One photo showed them kissing on her balcony, the city lights glittering behind them. His final night with her before the big reveal. How romantic. I forwarded the photos to the presentation folder, adding them to the final slide sequence. Fresh evidence, mere hours old. Catherine called at 8 a.m. How are you holding up? Surprisingly calm, I said, and it was true. The nervousness I'd expected hadn't materialized. Instead, I felt focused, clear-headed, purposeful. Is that strange? Given what you're about to do? No. You've had time to process. You've prepared. This is just execution now. She paused. David and I are leaving for the venue early. We'll make sure everything's set for your exit strategy. Thank you for everything. That's what friends are for, especially when their friends are about to detonate a nuclear bomb in the middle of a garden party. I smiled despite myself. That's one way to describe it. Julian emerged from the bathroom, toweling his hair. Who was that? Catherine, confirming details for tonight. I stood, moving past him toward my own shower. I should start getting ready. Hair appointment at 10. You're going to look beautiful, he said, catching my hand. You always do. I looked at him, really looked at him. The face I'd loved for 12 years, the man I'd built a life with, the stranger who'd been planning my humiliation while accepting my love.
I said thank you, simply, pulling my hand away. At the salon, my stylist swept my hair into an elegant updo, leaving a few soft tendrils framing my face. Special occasion? She asked. Anniversary party. 12 years. Congratulations! That's wonderful. So many marriages don't make it these days. No, I agreed. They certainly don't. By 3 p.m., I was back home getting dressed. The emerald green dress fit perfectly, elegant and sophisticated. I added the diamond earrings Julian had given me on our 10th anniversary, let him see them one last time and remember when he'd still been pretending to care. Julian was in his study, door closed. I could hear his voice through the wood, low and urgent. Talking to Marianne, probably, coordinating their arrival, finalizing their plan. I knocked once. I'm heading to the venue early to check final details. I'll see you there at 6? The door opened. He looked at me, and something flickered in his eyes. Appreciation, guilt, something I couldn't quite name. You look stunning. Thank you. Don't be late. I wouldn't miss this for the world. No, I thought. I'm sure you wouldn't. Catherine and David met me at the Riverside Estate at 4 p.m. The venue was transforming beautifully. White chairs arranged in elegant rows, floral centerpieces perfuming the air, string lights being tested overhead. It looked exactly like what I'd envisioned, a perfect celebration of enduring love. The irony was almost poetic. The screens are all positioned, Sophia said, walking me through the setup. See those frames we integrated into the garden pillars? They look decorative, but they're actually display screens. Same with the ones by the bar and near the entrance. 12 screens total, all synchronized. She handed me a small remote, no bigger than a car key fob. Red button triggers the switch. Once you press it, the system locks and runs the full presentation. No one can stop it. I turned the remote over in my hands, feeling its weight. This small device held the power to destroy multiple lives. And you've tested it? 3 times this morning. Works perfectly. The initial slideshow will play automatically when guests arrive. Your wedding photos, anniversary pictures, the nostalgic stuff. When you're ready, you press the button, and everything changes. I slipped the remote into the hidden pocket I'd had sewn into my dress. Thank you, Sophia. Give him hell, she said simply. By 5:30, guests were beginning to arrive. I stood near the entrance, greeting them with smiles and gratitude for coming, my best professional mask firmly in place. Elena, darling, everything looks magnificent, said Patricia Newsome, one of Julian's business associates. You've outdone yourself. Thank you, Patricia. I wanted tonight to be memorable. 12 years. That's quite an achievement. You two are an inspiration. I maintained my smile. We certainly are something. More guests filtered in. Colleagues, friends, Julian's business partners. I watched Derek arrive, looking sharp in a tailored suit. He caught my eye across the garden and gave a subtle nod. Ready. At 6:15, Marianne appeared at the entrance. She was wearing a stunning red dress, her hair swept up, diamonds at her throat. She looked radiant, confident, like a woman about to step into her new life. She saw me and waved, approaching with a bright smile. Elena, this is absolutely beautiful. You've created something magical.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm so glad you could make it. I air-kissed her cheeks, playing the gracious hostess. Julian should be arriving any moment. I know. She caught herself. I mean, I'm excited to celebrate with you both. The slip was telling. They'd coordinated. Of course they had. Julian arrived at 6:30, fashionably late, commanding attention as he walked through the garden. He found me immediately, crossing to kiss my cheek in front of everyone. Sorry I'm late. Last-minute work crisis. Of course, I said. Shall we greet our guests? We moved through the crowd together, the perfect couple. Julian's hand rested on the small of my back, proprietary, possessive. I caught him glancing at Marianne several times, small smiles passing between them.
secret communication right under everyone's noses. The string quartet began playing as dinner was served. I had arranged the meal meticulously, courses timed to perfection, wines paired expertly. Everything had to be flawless before I destroyed it. At the head table, Julian raised his glass during the appetizer course. I'd like to say a few words before we get too far into this evening. Here it comes, I thought, his prepared speech. 12 years ago, I married my best friend. He began, looking at me with what seemed like genuine emotion. The performance was masterful. Elena, you've been my partner, my support, my rock through everything. Building a life together has been the greatest adventure. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. I kept my expression neutral, attentive. Marriage isn't always easy. It requires honesty, communication, and courage. Tonight, I want to honor that by being completely honest about where we are. I felt the remote in my pocket. Not yet. Let him finish digging his grave. Elena and I have had many conversations recently about our future, about what we both want, about being true to ourselves. And we've realized... I pressed the button. The screens throughout the garden flickered once. The romantic slideshow of our marriage, the one playing on loop since guests arrived, suddenly cut to black. Julian froze mid-sentence, confusion crossing his face. Then the new presentation began. Our wedding photo appeared on every screen, accompanied by text. June 14th, 2013, the day I believed in forever. The crowd fell silent, sensing something was wrong. The presentation advanced. Photos from our marriage, anniversaries, vacations, ordinary moments of life together. The text continued. 12 years, 144 months, 4,380 days. How many of those days were lies? Julian's face drained of color. He turned to me, understanding dawning. Elena, what? Keep watching, I said calmly. You wanted honesty. Here it is. The screens shifted to show hotel receipts, time-stamped and dated. Month 132 of our marriage, the first hotel charge during a supposed business trip to Seattle, except the hotel was here in the city. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were standing now, moving closer to screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. More receipts appeared, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, a timeline of expenses that told a story of systematic deception. Then came the emails. Julian's messages to Marianne displayed on every screen, large enough for everyone to read. Thinking about you constantly. Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Someone in the crowd said, "Oh my God!" The presentation continued relentlessly. Photos of Julian and Marianne together, Marcus's surveillance work paying off spectacularly, entering hotels, dining intimately, the kiss on her balcony from last night time-stamped at 11:47 p.m. Marianne stood frozen at her table, her face scarlet. People at her table had turned to stare at her, recognition setting in. Then came the email that shattered everything. Julian's message about using this anniversary party to announce our divorce. We'll tell everyone together. Clean break, fresh start. Public commitment to our future. The crowd erupted. Voices overlapping, shock, anger, disbelief. Julian's business partners were conferring urgently. His mother had her hand over her mouth, horrified. But the presentation wasn't finished. New information appeared. Evidence of the Vector-Dine connection. Photos of Julian meeting with Victor Hartley. The USB drive exchange. Documentation of stolen intellectual property from Derek's company. Derek stood at his table, his voice cutting through the chaos. That's corporate espionage. That's federal crime territory. The final slides showed Marianne's access logs to Derek's company files, the downloads of proprietary code, the timeline connecting her theft to Julian's consulting work for Vectordyne. And then the closing message. Truth has a way of surfacing. Tonight, you've witnessed 12 years of lies exposed in 23 minutes. Some of you enabled this. Some of you suspected and said nothing. Some of you are innocent bystanders. All of you are now witnesses. Choose what kind of person you want to be with this information. The screens went black. The presentation ended. Silence descended over the garden, heavy and suffocating. Then, everyone started talking at once. Julian turned to me, his face twisted with rage and panic. How could you, in front of everyone?
How could I? My voice was steady, clear, carrying across the sudden hush as people stopped to listen. How could you plan to humiliate me at my own anniversary party? How could you steal 12 years of my life while building a future with someone else? How could you commit corporate espionage and think you'd face no consequences? This is insane, he hissed. You've destroyed everything. No, Julian. You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone could see what you did. Marianne was trying to leave, but people blocked her path, demanding explanations. Victor Hartley was on his phone, presumably calling his lawyers. Derek was speaking to several men I recognized as attorneys, no doubt initiating the legal action we'd planned. Julian's mother approached, her expression devastated. Julian, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't... Mom, I can explain. With evidence? I interjected, because I have 12 months of evidence. Documented, verified, undeniable evidence. She looked at me, then at her son, then back at me. I'm so sorry, Elena. I had no idea. Most people didn't. That was the point. Catherine appeared at my elbow. Car's ready? Time to go? I nodded. I'd said what I needed to say. I'd shown everyone what needed to be seen. There was nothing left for me here. As I turned to leave, Julian grabbed my arm. You can't just walk away. We need to talk. I pulled free easily. We're done talking, Julian. My attorney will be in touch. So will Derek's. And probably the FBI, given what you've been involved in. His grip on reality seemed to crack. This is crazy. You're ruining my life over your affair? Your lies? Your crimes? I met his eyes one final time. No, you ruined your own life. I just refused to let you ruin mine any further. I walked away from him through the crowd of stunned guests, with Catherine and David flanking me. Behind me, I heard the chaos continuing. Arguments, confrontations, the sound of lives unraveling. But I didn't look back. Catherine drove while David sat in the passenger seat, both maintaining a respectful silence as we pulled away from the Riverside estate. Through the rear window, I could see the chaos still unfolding. Clusters of people arguing, gesturing, Julian's figure standing alone near the head table. Marianne surrounded by accusatory faces. Where to? Catherine asked gently. The Harrington Hotel. I booked a suite there this morning. I'd planned every detail, including my own evacuation route. I can't go home. Not tonight. Smart, David said. Give yourself space to process. But processing wasn't what happened when we arrived at the hotel. Instead, my phone exploded. Text messages flooded in. Dozens, then hundreds. Missed calls stacked up. Social media notifications pinged relentlessly. Everyone who had been at the party, everyone who'd already heard about it, everyone with an opinion wanted to share it with me immediately. From Julian's mother, I don't condone what he did, but that display was unnecessarily cruel. You've humiliated our entire family. From my cousin Rebecca, holy hell, Elena, that was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed. He deserved every second of it. From colleagues, is this really how you handle private matters? Very unprofessional. From friends,
"We had no idea. We're so sorry. Are you okay?" From strangers who had somehow gotten my number. "You're my hero. You're a psycho. Can I interview you for my podcast?" I turned off my phone and threw it on the hotel bed. "Wine?" Catherine suggested, already opening the minibar. "Whiskey," I said. "Something strong." We sat in the suite's living area, and I finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and a strange hollowness. "Do you regret it?" Catherine asked after my second drink. I considered the question carefully. No. I regret trusting him. I regret wasting 12 years on someone who could lie so easily. But exposing him? No. He was going to humiliate me publicly anyway. At least this way, everyone knows the truth. "The fallout is going to be intense," David warned. "Legally, professionally, socially, for both of you." "Let it come," I said. "I'm ready." But I wasn't ready for what came next. By morning, the story had gone viral. Someone at the party had recorded parts of the presentation on their phone. The video was already circulating on social media. Blurry phone footage of the screens displaying Julian's emails, the photos, the evidence of his betrayal. The headlines were sensational. "Wife exposes cheating husband at anniversary party." "Epic revenge." "Woman destroys husband's life in public spectacle." "Corporate espionage revealed at garden party." My phone, which I had reluctantly turned back on, showed 362 missed calls, 27 voicemails, over 500 text messages. Among them were messages that mattered. From my attorney, Richard Sterling. "We need to talk immediately. Julian's lawyers are threatening to sue for defamation and emotional distress. Call me." From Derek. "Vectordyne's lawyers contacted us at 6 a.m. They're denying everything, but we have enough to proceed with the criminal complaint. FBI has been notified. Also, Marianne is trying to claim she had no knowledge of the stolen data's intended use. My legal team is handling it." From Marcus, the investigator. "Multiple media outlets requesting my surveillance footage. Haven't released anything without your approval. What do you want to do?" And one from Julian himself. "You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my relationships. I hope you're satisfied. This isn't over."
The threatening tone in his message was almost satisfying. He was finally understanding what consequences felt like. I called Richard first. "Elena, what you did last night was legally risky," he said without preamble. "Julian's claiming you violated his privacy, caused intentional emotional distress, and damaged his professional reputation with unverified allegations. Everything I showed was true and documented. That may not matter if he can argue you obtained evidence illegally or that you presented it in a deliberately harmful way. His lawyers are good, and they're angry. Let them be angry. I have evidence of adultery, corporate espionage, and fraud. He has what? Hurt feelings? It's more complicated than that. The public nature of your revelation, the fact that it involved his business dealings, these things create legal exposure for you." I felt my jaw tighten. "So what are you saying? I should have stayed quiet? Let him announce our divorce and move on with his mistress while I played the gracious, abandoned wife?" "I'm saying we need to be strategic about what comes next. The divorce will be contentious now. He's going to fight you on everything. Assets, alimony, the house. He's wounded and vindictive." "Good. Let him fight. I have evidence of 12 years of marriage and 1 year of systematic deception. I'm not worried." But I was worried. Not about the divorce itself, but about what I'd unleashed. The exposure had been satisfying in the moment, but now I was facing the reality of being at the center of a public scandal. My name was attached to viral videos. People were dissecting my decision online, debating whether I was a hero or a villain. The professional consequences began materializing quickly. 2 of my consulting clients called to terminate their contracts, citing concerns about my judgment and stability. One potential client who'd been interested in hiring me withdrew their offer. A speaking engagement I'd been scheduled for next month was quietly canceled. The social consequences were equally swift. Two couples who'd been at the party, couples I'd considered friends, sent messages saying they needed space to process and couldn't take sides in the situation. Julian's social circle closed ranks around him, painting me as a vindictive, unstable woman who'd crossed every line of decency. Even some of my own friends expressed concern. I understand you were hurt, but that public humiliation felt extreme. There had to be a better way. By day 3 after the party, I was questioning everything. Had I gone too far? Was public exposure really justice or just revenge dressed up in prettier language? I'd wanted Julian to face consequences, but I was facing them too. Professional damage, social isolation, the weight of public judgment. Catherine found me in the hotel suite at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, scrolling through social media comments about myself. "Stop reading that," she said, taking my phone. "Those people don't know you. They don't know what you lived through." Maybe they're right, though. Maybe I should have handled this differently. How? By letting him destroy you quietly? By protecting his reputation while he ruined your life? She sat beside me. "Elena, you did something difficult and public because your husband was planning to do the same to you. The only difference is you had evidence and he had lies." "But look at the damage. My career is suffering. People think I'm crazy. Even my own friends are distancing themselves." "The friends who matter haven't. The career opportunities that matter will come back once the dust settles. And the people who think you're crazy, they've never been betrayed like this. They have no frame of reference for the calculated cruelty of what Julian did." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt had settled in, heavy and persistent. The legal developments provided some vindication. By the end of the week, Derek's legal team had filed formal charges against Vectordyne for industrial espionage. Julian was named as a co-conspirator. The FBI opened an investigation into the intellectual property theft. Marianne was facing multiple charges related to unauthorized access and distribution of proprietary information. Richard called with updates. "Julian's defamation case is weak. Everything you presented was factually accurate and documented. His lawyers know it. They're posturing, hoping you'll settle to avoid continued public attention." I'm not settling. Good, because we're filing for divorce with fault on grounds of adultery. Between his affair, the evidence you've gathered, and the criminal investigation, you're in a strong position. He knows it. What does he want? To minimize damage. He's offering a quick dissolution, 50-50 asset split, no alimony either direction, mutual non-disclosure agreement. Absolutely not. I want the house, compensatory alimony, and no NDA. I'm not protecting his reputation after what he did. That's going to make this uglier. It's already ugly, Richard. Might as well be honest about it. The weeks following the party became a blur of legal meetings, media requests, and attempts to rebuild my professional reputation. Some doors had closed, but others unexpectedly opened. A women's advocacy organization reached out about speaking at their annual conference. A legal podcast wanted to interview me about navigating divorce after infidelity. 2 new consulting clients specifically sought me out because they appreciated my strategic thinking and thorough approach. "People respect competence," one of them told me. "What you did required planning, intelligence, and courage. Those are exactly the qualities we need in a consultant." Slowly, very slowly, I began to see the other side of the destruction I'd caused. Yes, I'd blown up my marriage publicly. Yes, I'd damaged relationships and faced harsh judgment. But I'd also reclaimed my narrative. I'd refused to be a passive victim of Julian's deception. And perhaps most importantly, I'd discovered who my real allies were.
Derek and I met regularly, coordinating on the legal front, but also providing mutual support. He understood the specific pain of betrayal combined with professional sabotage. We formed a genuine friendship built on shared experience and mutual respect. Catherine never wavered, showing up consistently even when I was difficult and doubting. And surprisingly, several women I barely knew reached out to share their own stories of betrayal, thanking me for showing them that strategic response was possible. that women didn't have to accept humiliation gracefully. "You gave me courage," one woman wrote. "My husband cheated, and everyone told me to be dignified, to handle it privately. But why? Why should I protect his reputation when he destroyed our family? Your story helped me realize I deserve to tell the truth, too." Those messages sustained me through the difficult weeks. I hadn't just exposed Julian, I'd accidentally become a symbol of something larger. Women refusing to absorb shame that belonged to their betrayers. 6 weeks after the anniversary party, I received notification that Julian had accepted my divorce terms. The house would be mine, along with significant alimony to compensate for the career damage his actions had caused. He was facing criminal charges that would likely result in fines, probation, and permanent damage to his professional reputation. Vectordyne had fired their CEO and was cooperating with federal investigators to minimize their own liability. Marianne had taken a plea deal: 3 years probation, restitution to Derek's company, permanent prohibition from working in tech or accessing proprietary systems. Her wedding, obviously, had never happened. Her social media accounts had gone dark. She'd essentially disappeared from public view. It was over. The legal battles weren't finished, but the major decisions had been made. My marriage was officially ending. Julian was facing consequences for his actions. I was free to rebuild. Standing in my hotel suite, I'd extended my stay, not ready to return to the house yet. I thought about everything that had happened: the discovery, the investigation, the preparation, the execution, the fallout. Had it been worth it? The question haunted me. I'd achieved my goals, justice had been served, truth had been exposed, consequences had been delivered, but I was also damaged, scarred by the process of fighting back. Maybe that was the price of refusing to be a victim. Maybe strength always came with costs. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Catherine. Ready to start looking at the house, time to reclaim my space. Her response came immediately. "Tomorrow, I'll bring wine and courage." I smiled despite everything. The battle had been brutal, but I'd survived, and survival, I was learning, was its own form of victory. 4 months after the anniversary party that destroyed my marriage, I stood in the doorway of what was now solely my house. Catherine had helped me move back in 2 weeks ago, but I'd been avoiding Julian's office, the last room that still held traces of our shared life. Today, I was finally ready to reclaim it. I'd hired professional movers to remove his remaining belongings. Everything he'd left behind, clothes, books, equipment, had been packed and delivered to his new apartment across town, the one he'd been forced to rent after I'd kept the house, the one that wasn't nearly as nice as what we'd had together. Now his office stood empty, except for the desk and bookshelves. I'd decided to convert it into my own workspace, a place where I could rebuild my consulting business without the ghost of his presence hovering. "You sure about this?" Catherine asked, carrying in boxes of my own things. "This room has history." "Exactly, which is why I'm erasing that history and writing something new." I opened the windows, letting fresh air chase away the stale remnants of his cologne and lies. My phone rang. Richard, my attorney. "The divorce is final," he said without a preamble. "Judge signed the papers this morning. It's done." I sat down on the empty desk, processing those words. Done. 12 years of marriage illegally dissolved. And the settlement? Everything we negotiated. The house is yours, alimony payments begin next month, and the criminal case against him is proceeding separately. Elena, you won. Completely. Winning felt different than I had expected. Not triumphant exactly, more like exhausted relief mixed with melancholy for what should have been. Thank you, Richard, for everything. After hanging up, I told Catherine the news. She hugged me tightly. "How do you feel?" "Free, sad, relieved, angry that I have to feel any of this?" I pulled back. "Is it normal to grieve something that was based on lies? You're not grieving the lies, you're grieving what you thought you had, what you invested in. That's completely normal." Over the following weeks, I slowly rebuilt my life with intentional choices. I repainted the bedroom in colors Julian never liked.
I replaced furniture that held too many memories. I started hosting dinner parties with the friends who'd stood by me, reclaiming my home as a space for genuine connection rather than performed perfection. My consulting business gradually recovered. The initial damage to my reputation was real, but time and consistent excellent work began to repair it. Some clients would never come back, put off by the public spectacle, but others specifically sought me out because of it. "You're known for strategic thinking and thorough execution," one new client explained. "What you did at that party proved you have both qualities in abundance. That's exactly what we need."
Derek and I continued meeting regularly, our friendship deepening beyond shared trauma. He'd successfully rebuilt his company's security after the breach, implementing new protocols and recovering the stolen technology. His ex-fiancée, Marianne, had moved to another state, trying to escape the consequences that followed her everywhere in our city. "Do you ever wonder if we went too far?" I asked him over coffee one afternoon, 6 months after everything had exploded. He considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. The public exposure was brutal for everyone involved. But then I remember that Julian was planning to humiliate you publicly anyway. He just wanted to control the narrative. You took that control back. People still think I'm vindictive. Some people always will, but the ones who matter understand that refusing to be a victim isn't the same as being vindictive. There's a difference between revenge and justice." Is there? Really? I'd been asking myself this question for months. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted everyone to see what he'd done. That sounds like revenge to me. Revenge would have been destroying him for the pleasure of his pain. Justice was exposing truth and allowing natural consequences to follow. You didn't fabricate anything, didn't lie, didn't manipulate. You just showed evidence of what actually happened. He met my eyes. That's justice. I wanted to believe him. Most days I did. The hardest part wasn't the legal aftermath or professional recovery. It was learning to trust again. To believe that people could be honest, that relationships could be genuine, that love wasn't always a performance hiding calculated betrayal. Therapy helped. I'd started seeing Dr. Sarah Chen weekly, working through the trauma of discovering that 12 years of my life had been built on deception. "You're experiencing a particular kind of grief," she explained during one session, "not just for the marriage, but for your own judgment. You trusted someone completely, and that trust was violated. Now you're questioning every instinct, every decision. How do I stop doing that?" You don't entirely. You learn to live with uncertainty while still remaining open to connection. You accept that trust is always a risk, but isolation is a guarantee of loneliness. 8 months after the party, I ran into Julian accidentally at a downtown restaurant. He was alone, looking thinner and older than I remembered. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stood and walked toward my table. Catherine, who was dining with me, tensed. "Want me to tell him to leave?" "No. Let's see what he wants." Julian stopped a respectful distance away. "Elena, can we talk, just for a minute?" I gestured to an empty chair. He sat, his hands folded on the table between us. "I'm not here to make excuses," he began. "What I did was inexcusable. The affair, the lies, the plan to humiliate you, all of it. I've spent 8 months in therapy trying to understand how I became someone capable of that kind of cruelty. And what did you learn? That I'm a coward who wanted the safety of marriage and the excitement of something new. That I rationalized every betrayal by telling myself you were too busy to notice, too independent to care. That I built a fantasy where I was the victim of a stale marriage instead of the architect of its destruction." I studied his face, looking for manipulation, for performance, but he just looked tired and genuinely remorseful. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to hear it. Not an apology. I know that's worthless now, but an acknowledgement. You weren't crazy. You weren't overreacting. Everything you did at that party, every exposure, every consequence, I earned all of it." Something in my chest loosened slightly.
Not forgiveness, exactly, but a release of some weight I'd been carrying. "Thank you for saying that." He nodded, starting to stand. Then he paused. "For what it's worth, I hope you find someone who deserves you, someone who sees what they have and doesn't destroy it looking for something else." After he left, Catherine exhaled. "Well, that was unexpected." "Yeah." I took a sip of wine, processing the encounter. "I think that's the first completely honest thing he said to me in years. Does it change anything?" "No, but it helps, somehow, knowing he finally understands what he did." A year after the party, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. The topic, strategic thinking in crisis, turning betrayal into empowerment. I almost declined. Did I want to be known as the woman who destroyed her husband publicly? Was that my identity now? But then I thought about the messages I'd received from women facing similar situations, women who felt powerless and ashamed, women who had been told to handle their pain privately while their betrayers moved on publicly. So I accepted the invitation. Standing on stage in front of 300 women, I told my story, not to glorify revenge, but to talk honestly about the choice between passive victimhood and active response, about the costs of fighting back, the judgment and criticism and professional damage, but also about the freedom of refusing to absorb someone else's shame. I'm not here to tell you that public exposure is the right answer for everyone. Every situation is different, and only you can decide what justice looks like in your circumstances. But I am here to say that you don't have to protect the reputation of someone who destroyed your trust. You don't have to be dignified in your pain while they're comfortable in their betrayal. You get to choose how you respond. And whatever you choose, make sure it's for you, not for them.
The standing ovation was unexpected and overwhelming. Afterward, dozens of women approached me, sharing their own stories, thanking me for giving them permission to be angry, to fight back, to refuse victimhood. One woman in her 50s hugged me tightly. "My husband cheated 20 years ago. Everyone told me to forgive him, move on, save the marriage. I did, and I've regretted it every day since. I wish I'd had your courage to say no, to demand better, to show everyone who he really was." Her words stayed with me for days. 15 months after the party, Derek invited me to dinner. Not our usual coffee meeting, but an actual dinner reservation at an upscale restaurant. "Is this a date?" I asked when he picked me up. He smiled. "Would that be terrible?" I considered. Derek and I had built something genuine. Friendship based on shared experience, mutual respect, and consistent presence. We understood each other's damage. We'd supported each other through the worst. "No," I said, "it wouldn't be terrible at all." The dinner was easy, comfortable, without pretense or performance. We talked about everything. His company's recent success, my consulting business thriving again, the upcoming trial where we'd both be called as witnesses against Vectordyne and Julian. "Are you nervous," he asked, "about testifying?" "A little, but also ready. I want to tell the truth publicly one more time, officially documented. No more secrets, no more hidden betrayals." "To truth," Derek raised his glass. "To truth, and to new beginnings that are actually honest." 2 years after the anniversary party that ended my marriage, I sat in my home office, the former space that had belonged to Julian, and reflected on everything that had changed. My consulting business was stronger than ever. The notoriety from the party had faded into a footnote, replaced by a solid reputation for strategic thinking and thorough execution. My relationship with Derek had evolved slowly, carefully, both of us commitment cautious after our betrayals. But it was real, built on honesty, mutual respect, and the understanding that trust was earned through consistency, not promises. My friendships had been tested and refined. I'd lost some people I thought were close, but the ones that remained were genuine, proven through difficulty. And I gained something unexpected, a sense of my own strength. I'd survived betrayal, fought back strategically, endured public judgment, and rebuilt my life on my own terms.
Was the public exposure worth it? The question still lingered sometimes. But then I remembered Julian's plan to announce our divorce at the party he'd made me plan, to introduce Marianne in front of everyone I knew, to control the narrative while I stood there humiliated and powerless. I refused that script. I'd written my own instead. And whether people called it revenge or justice, vindictive or empowering, it had been mine. My choice, my terms, my refusal to be a passive victim of someone else's cruelty. That, I'd finally decided, was enough. I opened my laptop to respond to a new speaking invitation. A university wanted me to talk to their business students about strategic decision-making under pressure. I smiled and began typing my acceptance. The past couldn't be changed, the damage couldn't be undone, but the future? That was wide open, full of possibility and entirely my own to create. And this time, I was building it on truth.